You can tell me if we're sharing a screen. I'm not quite there yet, so bear with me here. Okay. So how about that? All right. All right, folks. Well, today is the second day of chapter 22 on budgeting. So I'm just going to walk through these last two problems. The first one was exercise 21, and I'll just read that here. On January 1st, this controller is planning capital expenditure for the years 6 through 9. And what they're trying to do here is, which is a little bit unusual, but what they're trying to do is map out these capital expenditures. And I shouldn't say it's unusual. It is unusual to the level of the dollar amounts that we're talking about here. You don't usually plan for those kind of dollars outside of financing. So, and yes. Oh, yes. And I got it going. Thank you. You know me well, old and forgetful. So this is the one time I think I remembered. I appreciate it. So what we got going on here is there's three different things: building, equipment, and then their IT system. So, and they got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different facilitators. You know, you got the director of facilities, the vice president of marketing, the COO, the director of IT, and then the CFO. And they talk about, you know, how are they going to do this kind of stuff. So I'll just read through it here. The director of facilities, the construction contract was signed in the late 5 for the construction of a new factory building at a contract of $10 million. The construction is scheduled to begin in 6 and completed in 9. Well, here's the $10 million. You'd say, well, how did you come up with 4 and how did you come up with 6? Well, we'll read on and we'll see how that bears out. Okay, the next one. Once the new factory building is finished, we plan to purchase $1.5 million in equipment in late 7. So that's this number right here, the 1.5. I expect an additional 200 will be needed the following 8. So there's your another 200. And install the equipment before we can begin production. If sales continue to grow, I expect we'll need another $1 million, and that's this one here in 9. Okay, the COO. We've been really growing lately. I wouldn't be surprised if we need to expand the size of our new factory building in 9 by 35%. Well, if this is 10 million, 35% would be 3.5 million, and that's where we come up with that number right there. Fortunately, we can expect inflation to have minimal impact, and that's why they just used the 35% times the 10 million and didn't add another 3% or whatever. IT, we need to upgrade our information systems to wireless networking technology. It doesn't make sense to do this until after the new factory building is completed. During 8, once the factory is up and running, we should equip the whole facility with wireless technology. I think it would cost us $800,000 today. However, prices have been dropping 25% per year. So this is the one that's probably the most confusing. We're going to start the construction of the building here in 6, and it says if we did it then, it would cost us $800,000, but it's going to drop 25% each year till we finally decide to pull the trigger. So with this IT, it's right here, $800,000. If we don't do it in 06, then, or I should say it this way, if we did it in 6, it would cost us $800,000. But we're going to do it in 8. So 800,000, not times 100%, which would be in 7, but rather another 25% reduction, which would mean 800,000 times 75% is what we would pay if we were to do it in 7. However, we're going to take another 25% off that number, or take it times 75% to get to 450. So if we did it here, it would cost us 800,000. If we waited 1 year, it would knock 25% off, so it'd be 800 times 75%. But we're going to wait yet another year, so whatever this number is times another 25% reduction. Did anybody have any questions on that information systems? Does that make sense? And IT, interestingly enough, works that way. The latest and the greatest right now is going to cost you more than if you were to hold off on that a couple years from now. The CFO, I'm excited about our long-term prospects. My only short-term concern is managing our cash flow. While we expend $4 million, that's where we get this number here in 06, and $6 million in 7. So I think after walking through all of these, all 5 roles, we've laid out their future capital expenditure need. And what it really does for the company is just say, okay, this is what we got for dollars that we're looking at spending in 6, 7, not much in 8, and then another chunk again in 9. And how are we going to, essentially, how are we going to finance this? So it just lays out what they think they're going to need, and then what kind of cash flow needs are going to be required. Any questions on number 21? Anybody? Thank you. Thank you. Then our last problem for chapter 22 is problem 22-2A. So this one is just a whole bunch of budgets rolled up into one problem. The first one is the sales budget. And what did we say last week? The sales budget is the one that you always do first, and that'll certainly be a question for you on the test. You know, what is the number one budget you start with, and it kind of drives everything, and that's the sales budget. So to produce a sales budget, and you can do this many different ways, but we're looking at, you know, the product, and in this case they did the product types, and then the area, so Maine, Vermont, and New Hampshire, but there's 2 different types of grills, and then what is the selling price per grill. So for the backyard chef, there's actually $700 for Maine, and then there's a little bit higher for Vermont and New Hampshire, and then the master chef, again, there's 3 different prices: $1,200, $1,300, and $1,400. So ultimately, you know, what are we really getting at is this right here. What is our total revenue? So you could lay this out many different ways. Some might have laid it out just by Maine, and then another column for Vermont, and another column for New Hampshire, and that's fine. Ultimately, we want to get to this. And this is also very important. What is the volume? You know, we're looking at 910 for the backyard chef, and we're looking at 440 for the master chef. And then the second requirement of the problem was to do a production budget. Well, remember, this one is pretty much like that same format that we see is how many do we expect to sell, and we get that right from our sales budget, 910 and our 440, so 910 and the 440. However, it tells us what we began with right here, estimated inventory at the beginning, 30 and 32, and that's right there in part B of your problem. What is our estimated inventories? And then they also tell us what would we like to have on hand at the end, and that's in part C of your problem. We want to have 40 of this type, 22 of this type. So in order to get to the number that we need to produce for the backyard chef, we know what we're going to sell. We know what we'd like at the end. We know what we started with, so we don't have to reproduce those. We are looking at producing 920 units. And the chef, the master chef, we're looking at 430. We know what we're going to sell. We know what we want to have on hand at the end of the month. And then we will take away what we started the month with. So that is our production budget. In number 3, step 3, it says, what is your direct materials need? So it tells us, okay, what all goes into these grills? Well, there's 4 parts. There's the grates, there's the stainless steel, the sub-assemblies, and the shelves. And this will tell us what do we have to purchase, but then also, more importantly, what is our cash needs to do that purchase. So looking at just the grates, and if you look at part D in your problem, so we're looking at grates, it takes 3 units per product. Well, we are going to produce right up here 920 Backyard Chef. So Backyard Chef right here, 920 times 3 grates is 2760. And knowing here we're producing 430. So if we look at for the grates, 430, and it part D, it says the second half of part D, it takes 6 units for the Master Chef. So 430 times 6. Okay, so that's how we get to this 2580. And then if you look at part C again, what is that desired ending inventory? Part C, it tells us we want to have 340 grates. So now we add up what we're going to do for the Backyard Chef, for the Master Chef. What we want for ending inventory is a total of 5680. It also tells us that there was 290 grates in our beginning inventory, which comes from part B. Part B. So we take that away. That means we got to purchase 5390 units of grates. It tells us the purchase price is $15 per grate, which you can make a note in your problem. This is coming from letter E. Letter E. So we know what we need for Backyard Chef, Master Chef, what we want for ending, subtotal. Take away what we began with. That's what we got to purchase. That's what the cost is per unit. We're looking at a need of $80,850 to purchase the grates for both Backyard Chef and Master Chef. So we just looked at the grates column. However, it works the same way with all those same areas, B, C, D, and E, how to calculate stainless steel or the burner subassemblies and the shelves. So like what we did for grates is what we'll be able to calculate. How much do we need for stainless steel? How much do we need for burners? And how much we need for the shelving? So our cash need for our purchases, so our direct materials purchases budget, we're going to need just shy of $750,000. And that's just for the month of July. Just for the month of July. Any questions on part 3 of this problem? All right, and then number 4. Okay, number 4. So based upon all this stuff that we're going to produce right up here, all these units, we need some labor. We need people to do it. So here again, there's 3 departments that we're going to have people working: stamping, forming, and assembly. All right. So again, how many were we going to produce? We remind you again, 920 and 430. So you keep those numbers in your head. So the Backyard Chef for stamping. So if you look at step F in your book, it takes a half an hour per unit. So looking at the Backyard Chef, remember, we had 920 units, and a half an hour is 460. The Master Chef, if you look at the second part of letter F, it takes 6/10 of an hour. 6/10 of an hour. So now there was 430 that we were going to produce. 6/10 of an hour is 258. So we've got a total of 718 hours for just stamping for the month of July. At a rate of $17 per hour, we're looking at, just for the stamping department for the month of July, a cash need of a little over 12 grand to make sure our labor is paid. And that would work the same way for the forming and the assembly. So when you get to the forming department, it takes 0.6 hours for the backyard chef. It takes 0.8 or 0.8 of an hour for the master chef. Assembly for the backyard chef, it takes an hour, and it takes an hour and a half in the assembly department for the master chef. So obviously, and we see it all the way through the problem, the master chef is probably a little bigger grill, a little more sophisticated grill than the backyard chef. So any questions on labor? You know, this is a very, very simplistic labor budget. It doesn't show, you know, how many people that would take, right? You got 718 hours, and if you would just say, and I'm just going to run this math with you here real quick, 718 hours, and if we are going to say it's 40 hours a week, you know, so 40 hours a week times 4, that's 160 hours. That's no overtime. So if you take 718 divided by 160, that would look at about 4.5 people. So you're probably going to need at least 4, possibly 5. They're going to have to work in another department because you're not going to keep them busy, because we're not factoring any overtime here. So if you're going to stay at 4 or a little bit less, you're going to need, you're going to have to bump up these dollar requirements for the overtime, because you won't have the bodies to do straight time. That would take care of problem 22A. That essentially, for all practical purposes, ends our time with chapter 22. Does anybody have any questions as it relates to budgeting or chapter 22? I'll tell you exactly what budgets you need to know for the exam. There's all kinds of them in the text. There's just a few that I think are very important to make sure you know, so I don't want you to worry about that. But they end up being pretty straightforward. You know, the sales budget, you're always going to look at your selling price, the number of units. Always start with the sales budget. And then you've got, from that, you know what you're going to sell, what you got to produce. And from the production, you're looking at direct materials and direct labor. And we looked at an overhead problem already in the exercises, but those are pretty much straightforward. They have to tell you what it is. Overhead is going to probably have a little bit of variable and mixed cost, variable fixed and mixed cost with it, but they're going to have to tell you what the variable, or excuse me, what the overhead costs are. So we've taken care of the 3 parts to a product: direct materials, the purchases part, direct labor, and then the overhead, as we discussed. So that's a short day, folks. That's really all we have for chapter 22. I appreciate you taking the time. Our next chapter, just so that you're aware, we're going to jump right over into chapter 25. So we're done with budgeting, and then we'll move right over into 25. And 25 is on differential analysis and product pricing. So differential analysis, what we mean by that is, an example, should we make this product or should we buy it? Or we produce it this far, should we process it a little bit further and could we get more? So it's the differential. Should we keep it where it's at or go a step further? And product pricing, you know, what do we got to price this product at so that we know we make money? One concept we'll learn in chapter 25 is there are some items that we sell that we always know we're not going to break even. And Walmart's a really good example of that. There are many items that they probably will sell when there's the sales that it either is at break even or slightly below, and it's just to get you into the store. Fortunately, that little concept's not working right now for obvious reasons, but there are many stores that sell knowing that if we can sell this product at either break even or slightly at a loss, they're going to come in and buy a whole bunch of other stuff that we're making great dollars on. So we're going to look at those kind of scenarios in chapter 25. I will send you out a meeting invite again with the exercises that we'll look at for chapter 25. And that's really all I have for today. Before I let you go, does anybody have any questions for me? All right. Well then, folks, you all have a great day. Continue to stay healthy and hope. I know later this week it's going to get really nice and warm. I think in the mid 70s. So that'll be even nicer. So you guys take care. Thanks for joining me. Goodbye.